this morning I was having a conversation with my brother about why I feel like the iPhone is just a bad device. I mean, yeah, there are some good things about it, but holistically speaking, I feel like it's not great. And I listed a bunch of stuff, but I'm surprised at myself. Consider subscribing. That one of the things I forgot to mention is how anti-repair Apple is when it comes to not just the iPhone, but really all of their devices. But specifically talking about the iPhone, I found this article, and I hate when reporters or journalists or whatever you want to call them give these big companies credit when they really don't deserve it. So let's quickly go through this, and then I'll give you my 2 cents as to why I feel like this is effectively a waste of our time. Apple will open the iPhone to repair with used parts. Apple is changing a huge part of its self-repair process and will finally accept fixes with used genuine parts. Apple is finally making it easier for users to repair their iPhones with used parts. In an update on Thursday, the company announced that this fall, owners of select iPhone models will be able to repair their devices with used genuine parts while retaining full functionality. When repairing an iPhone, Apple requires iPhone users to go through a process called parts pairing, which makes them match the serial number of their device to that of the new part sold by Apple. If a user replaced a part with an aftermarket or used component, the iPhone would display pesky notifications saying that Apple isn't able to verify the newly installed piece. In the case of Face ID and Touch ID sensors, the part might not work at all. This change should do away with these notifications for used parts, as Apple says calibration for genuine Apple parts, new or used, will happen on device after the part is installed. It also means users and repair shops will no longer have to provide the serial number of the device they are fixing when ordering most parts from the self-service repair store. The change will apply to displays, batteries, and cameras at launch. Apple says future iPhone releases will come with support for used biometric sensors such as Face ID and Touch ID. At the same time, Apple is also getting more serious about tracking used iPhone components. The company announced that it will extend its activation lock feature, which is supposed to prevent thieves from using a device that's lost or stolen, to iPhone components. If a device under repair detects that a supported part was obtained from another device with activation lock or lost mode enabled, calibration capabilities for that part will be restricted, Apple says. If you do end up repairing your iPhone with a used part, the device will store that information in the Parts and Service History section of the Settings app on iOS. Apple doesn't specify which iPhone models will be supported this fall, but the company told TechCrunch it will be the iPhone 15 and later. With this latest expansion to our repair program, we're excited to be adding even more choice and convenience for our customers while helping extend the life of our products and their parts. John Turnus, Apple's Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering, says in a statement. Even though Apple still hasn't extended its approval to aftermarket iPhone parts, the change is huge for repair shops and DIYers who have had to deal with paying a higher premium for new iPhone parts. All right. So, again, in summary, trash. Absolutely trash. Nothing has changed. And I don't know who Emma Roth is, news, and you can see whatever it says right there. But if you've actually been in the repair business, and I've never been in the business, but I've done a lot on my own, iPhones and other things. And when you hear something like this, it's like, this really didn't fix anything, especially the way Apple is implementing it. Now, I'll give a couple of suggestions as to how it actually would have made sense to the consumer, not to Apple, because, yeah, this makes sense to Apple, because at the end of the day, they're still going to come out on top. So if we could go through this piece by piece quickly. So, yeah, the whole parts pairing process. Essentially what that means, and the article, talked on it, is, okay, the screen on your iPhone. When Apple made the phone, they took a serial number that's on the screen. I mean, yeah, you don't see the number, but a serial number that's embedded in the firmware of the screen, and they paired it to the motherboard. So therefore, if you try to take another genuine iPhone screen, so you take your iPhone 15, take the screen off, and take the screen from another iPhone 15 and put it on, it won't work properly, and or you'll get a bunch of notifications letting you know that we can't confirm that this is a genuine part. In the case of Touch ID and Face ID, yeah, there are instances of people online showing that these features just flat out don't work. And in addition to those features not working, other aspects of the phone might stop working. So the individual component is compared, but they might be some of the parts are paired together. So it's you replace this one thing, not only doesn't that one thing work, but something else also now won't work. Okay. So again, talking about the notifications that you may or may not get, saying some more things are going to come in the future, but this really is what makes it so that this means absolutely nothing. At the same time, Apple is getting more serious about tracking used iPhone components. The company announced that it will extend its activation lock feature, which is supposed to prevent thieves from using a device that's lost or stolen, to iPhone parts, meaning that we all know what the activation lock is you can't do anything with the phone. If a phone is activation locked and you are attempting to set up the iPhone, you'll get to the screen where it says, oh, either enter the password for the iCloud account that's attached to the phone already. If you know the PIN, the previous PIN that was on this device, or a PIN of another device that's tied to that iCloud account, something. But essentially, you can't do anything because you have to activate the phone. And in order to activate the phone, you need to know the credentials that are tied to the phone. Now, right now, that's essentially just tied to the motherboard. So the guts of the phone, it's the iPhone. It's what makes it a phone, not the screen, not the battery, not any other component that you could potentially remove, like a camera. But now they're saying we're going to expand that to all of those components. So there are instances when, people do lose phones. It happens, but they don't report it lost or stolen. And it's still tied to their iCloud account, and they just go off and get a new phone and don't think twice about this misplaced phone. Now, somebody might find that phone, and yet nobody has done anything nefarious in the situation, but because that person never removed it from their iCloud account, now nothing can be used from that phone. So at the moment, nothing can be used because iCloud lock prevents you from using the phone, and parts pairing prevents you from using the components. However, if Apple is saying, well, now you can use the parts. However, if the phone is still tied to somebody's iCloud account, the parts won't work. So they've added more restriction while giving you some leniency, which essentially results in a net zero. So nothing has changed. I think what I'm trying to really say here. So not only that, when it comes to third-party repair shops, where does it say right there? So we got it up there. Okay. Now, another thing, it says, last paragraph, even though Apple still hasn't extended its approval to aftermarket iPhone parts, the change is huge for repair shops and DIYers. So for repair shops or DIYers, where are you getting these used components from? For me, and I have my little eBay thing over here where you can come and the condition of the phone over here, everything in the very last one is for parts are not working. So usually my parts would come from another device or an aftermarket part, which we know aftermarket parts are not a part of this. So if you are finding used iPhone components, they are probably still attached to said iPhone. And there's a good chance that iPhone is tied to somebody's iCloud account. Because seriously. So if the iPhone that you are looking at that is used is not tied to somebody's iCloud account and the parts are still functioning, you're just going to use that phone. Like, you don't need to harvest it for parts. And I feel like what's getting lost here is that even though Apple is saying, yes, you can use used parts, however, those used parts will be more strictly regulated. Now there are effectively less used parts to even use. It's not going to work. Okay. Like I said, pretty much just a net zero. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm getting hot out here, is that it's only going to be the iPhone 15 and later. So again, when it comes to used parts available on the market, there are more iPhone 1 through 14s on the market right now than there are iPhone 15s. But this process or this feature or whatever you want to call it isn't going to apply to any of them. So we won't even potentially see whatever benefit we could have seen for a couple years to come, because there aren't just used iPhone 15 cameras floating around right now. Can I, like, let me see, iPhone camera. So of course we got the lenses, but yeah, like there just aren't those floating around. In summary, and it's getting hot out here, Apple is saying, hey, we're going to allow used genuine parts in our iPhone 15s and later. However, those parts need to not be tied to somebody's iCloud account, because that's something we are going to now start tracking. When it comes to DIYers, most likely they're getting these used genuine parts from used phones that there's a high likelihood that that phone is still tied to somebody's iCloud account, because that's what happens. Like, we see it all around us that there are plenty of used iPhones that are still tied to somebody's iCloud account, and we can't use them because they're tied to somebody's iCloud account. However, now we can use the parts, but the parts will be tied to that iCloud account. So you can't do anything with that. Also, it's only going to be for iPhone 15 and later, meaning there are a ton, billions of iPhones that this just doesn't even apply to. And I don't like that this reporter didn't really address that at the end of the day, this probably is just a net zero. And I'm not one to say, oh, well, at least this $3 trillion company is letting us potentially, man, it's getting hot in here. This $3 trillion company is kind of letting us actually do something, because effectively they aren't. At the end of the day, this is a net zero. So don't give them kudos when they haven't actually done anything to make a real difference.